You're listening to episode 51 of the Product Boss podcast. In this episode, we chat with Jawn of Pins and Paper. But first,
we wanted to hop in here before the music sounds, and we wanted to ask you guys a favor. We would love it if you stopped right now and subscribed to this podcast. And if you'd be so kind, we would love it if you could either leave us a review or share this with someone you think could benefit from listening to the Product Boss podcast. So to jump in, we wanted to just share a couple reviews that we've recently gotten that we are so honored and thankful for. So let's start off with Bad Mama Jamma.
Mama Jamma.
Mama
right?
Jamma. You say tomato, I say tomato. So she said, or he said, I have been listening to a lot of e-commerce based podcasts for a few years now, and this podcast has quickly become one of my standout favorites. Mina and Jacqueline are so knowledgeable and provide so many nuggets and actionable insights. On top of providing some great tips, they are genuinely likable, and I oftentimes find myself chuckling along with them. Great listen. Thanks for chuckling with us.
I know. It's a woman, obviously, Mama Jamma. So, genuinely likable. You guys, these make me feel so good.
Thank you. Thank you so much for listening and we know that it is so competitive out there with what you choose to listen to and put in your earbuds. So we are just so grateful for you to take the time and listen to us speak and chuckle. And who else should we read off?
I want to read off one from Five Little Elephants. I've kind of interacted with her a little bit on Instagram because she's on there too. She does like custom tumblers and cups and glassware and stuff like that. And she has 5 kids, hence the Five Little Elephants. So, bless her heart for managing so many kids too. But I wanted to read hers. New fangirl, she put. In a sea of service-based podcasts, this one is an answer to my prayers. Perfect for me and my Etsy business. I'm over here binging these episodes and learning new things. Thank you, ladies, for sharing your knowledge and helping others achieve their business dreams. Thank you, Amanda. That is such an awesome review.
And you're helping us reach our business dreams. So thank you to all of our listeners. And the last one I wanted to read off was Urban Alchemy. And we are familiar with this product. So she writes, after listening to a handful of these entertaining and highly informative podcast episodes, I knew that these ladies would be important allies for growing my product-based business, Urban Alchemy. I have since joined their mastermind and couldn't be happier with my decision. I encourage you to give them a listen. You will not be disappointed. So thank you, because we love working with you, Talay, and we are just so honored and grateful that you took the time out of your busy day to head on over to leave a review for us.
Yeah, she does roll on aromatherapy that's clinically based blends. So she'll be also in the show notes as well, along with Five Little Elephants.
So thank you so much. And also Bad Mama Jamma, if you want to jump onto our Facebook group and let us know who you are, we will also thank you in person via the internet.
And we'll actually link you in the show notes.
Mm-hmm. So thank you again. And if you do have the opportunity to just pause right now and head on over to subscribe, leave a review, or share this with someone you know, we would be so grateful. So let's head into the show.
Welcome to the Product Boss podcast, where we help product-based businesses grow their sales and improve their strategies.
Hey everyone, I want to introduce you to my co-host and biz bestie, Mina Kunlo-Sitep, an Amazon guru that has built a multi-6-figure product-based business.
And introducing the other half of the Product Boss, Jacqueline Snyder. She has helped launch and grow over 500 fashion apparel and accessory brands, even one of her own.
And together, we share our inventory of secret weapons that will help you dig deep and do the work it takes.
Are you ready? Let's build together.
Hey everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Product Boss podcast. I'm your host, Jacqueline Snyder, with my talented co-host, Mina Kunlo-Sitep. Hey, Mina.
Hey, Jacqueline.
So we're excited today to have a special guest. We have Jawn McQuade of Pins and Paper. Welcome, Jawn.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
Yeah, we're so excited. We were having a pre-chat and just cracking
we definitely pre-gamed a little bit.
We like to loosen our guests up.
We really loosened it up right there.
So hopefully it continues on. So if you have watched our Instagram or IGTV, you will see a little mini episode of Mina interviewing Jawn at Magic in Vegas. And he was just so gracious to come on the podcast because we fell in love with his business and all of the products they had. I mean, just everything. Like, I wanted to buy everything. And so, yeah, we're excited to have you. So tell us a little bit
I'm like,
about...
don't worry, you can still buy everything. That's totally still open. No worries.
I don't know who I'd send all these cards to, but tell us a little bit about Pins and Paper.
Yeah, so Pins and Paper is actually a greeting card company that we started. We were both in Asia, living in Asia last year, me and my business partner, Mike. And we had always done kind of creative businesses in the past. And one thing that we really wanted to focus on this time around was kind of this idea of creating a passive income, because we had had a huge startup where we raised millions before and did that, and that kind of changed into a corporate setting. So with Pins and Paper, we realized that enamel pins were becoming really popular, especially around LA and New York. And we really wanted to make that kind of something that you could not just buy for yourself, but something that you could gift away to someone. So we came up with the idea of incorporating these enamel pins onto cards to kind of bring the cards to life. Every company that we've ever had, our tagline has always been bring X to life. So this time it's bring greeting cards to life. Got to pump life into everything that you do. So we started it about a year ago when we first got back from Asia, and we're pushing really hard to work with some of the bigger retail partners that we had before.
Yeah, awesome. So when you're in Asia, why did you go to Asia? Just curious.
So, yeah, no, definitely. I went to Asia after working for my last startup for 5 years. And I think after doing that, I really wasn't sure where to go after that. I feel like you never know how difficult and time consuming and stressful running a company is going to be until you're kind of forced in it. And, we had gotten to this moment where we raised millions of dollars from investors. And so we had to answer to all of them. And it really just started to kind of beat us down after a while. And so when I felt like the company had kind of gotten to a point where I felt like it was more corporate focused and not as creative, I knew that I had a space to be able to leave. And versus kind of, my fear has always been to turn into a businessman. It's been like my
worst nightmare ever.
My worst nightmare, because I really feel like you lose that creative edge when everything has to be presented in number form. Because a lot of creative ideas, the numbers just aren't there when you launch them. And you really just have to believe and believe and push and push and push. And so I used that moment to exit out. And so I was looking for inspiration everywhere. I had started applying to these entertainment companies in LA, and I realized that even those didn't seem not corporate. So I kind of just ended up being like, okay, look, I have this time, I have all this money saved up. It's either I stay in LA or stay in New York and kind of keep pursuing this life in a box of how you're told to live, or use this moment to really kind of fill myself up with life, to kind of figure it all out and to feel charged again and to feel that creative spirit. So I went to Mexico at first for a few months, and then went to Asia for the year last year, which was only supposed to be for 2 weeks, but I bought a motorcycle, and that added some time on it. Yeah, so I ended up living in Vietnam for 6 months and then traveling through Asia for the other 6, which was awesome. In Vietnam, I joined a project to build wells in small villages. So that was really nice, especially after kind of leading our startup into a more corporate feel. It really felt there was this need that I needed to do something that didn't have to do with mass products.
Yeah.
That I needed to like bring it in, refocus on people. Because our first startup was this DIY company, and the whole thing was realizing that people get less creative as they go on because they're told they can't be creative. They're told it won't make money. They're told they don't have time, that it's too hard. And we really wanted to simplify that problem. And so I think I ended up staying in Asia so long because I really wanted to get in touch with this idea of creative giving and being able to use your creative side to better other people's lives as well.
Yeah, greater impact for sure.
So tell us, so you've known Mike for about a decade, it seems like at this point.
Yeah, about 8 to 9
Yeah.
years. Something like
So Nina and I call each other biz besties, even though we're biz partners. Do you guys have anything that you call each other or?
We really need to. We really need to. Because people are always like, so you guys live together? I'm like, we live together, yeah. And they're like, but you own a business together. I'm like, yes, we've owned several businesses together. And like, and you're best friends. I'm like, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And people are just like, okay, so you're married. And I'm like, no, we're not married. Although for tax purposes, maybe we should consider.
It's true. So tell us a little bit about Mike, like how you met him and sort of the process of you guys starting that business.
Yeah, I was actually going to Berkeley for politics for a moment and absolutely hated my life while I was doing it. I dropped out of school after, I think, my second semester. Had no idea what I was going to do. I just knew that studying politics was going to be the death of me, especially if the goal was to go into politics after that. I was like, and now it turns out you don't even have to go to school to go into politics. So that's nice. So maybe I still have it. So I ended up meeting Mike in San Francisco, and Mike was designing his own line of clothes at the time. And so we started talking about clothes and fashion, and he offered me this role on his branding team to pump out his clothes. And through that, we ended up getting them in Urban Outfitters, which was kind of our first taste of getting into huge retailers like that. And then after a few months, we started teaching workshops all around San Francisco, teaching people how to design clothes, how to screen print their own clothes, pretty much any kind of customizable piece of fashion that you could do. We started hosting these classes. After pumping those out for a good 6 months, they somehow, and this is not saying that his clothes were not the best ever, but somehow our classes started to make more money than the actual line of clothing did. So we knew that we were onto something there. So we took some time. We got rid of all the stores that we personally owned and took some time to figure out how we could capitalize on this market of people wanting to experience things and learn new things in a creative manner. And so we came up with this idea called Maker's Kit, where we would sell product goods that contained all the supplies that you would need for whatever workshop it was, whether if it was screen printing or it was jewelry making or candle making or plants. Or so you would buy the kit, and they all came with video links. So we shot video content for everyone. So you would buy the kit, you would bring it home, and then you would basically take this digital class in your house at your own time with your friends. We had people that would do parties where they would buy boxes of kits, so there'd be like 12 in it, and they would throw their own kind of crafting parties. And it went really well kind of right off the bat. We got a cover story in the San Francisco Chronicle in our second month, just because one of the writers came and took one of our workshops. We ended up filming a segment for a very popular entrepreneurial show. Like, am I allowed to talk about that? I don't know. It's not dolphins. It's not dolphins in a pond. It's another animal in a tank.
Oh yeah, got it.
And so we went and did that, and then ended up getting a deal on the show. And then our investor at the time ended up getting into some legal problems. So we were kind of left in limbo for a while, and we were really running out of money. We had moved to LA, and we had bought a warehouse because we were working with Macy's at the time now, and we were really kind of running low in a way that, like, we weren't getting paid. We really couldn't afford the business at all. And so we ended up applying to this tech accelerator named Techstars, which I was against. I was also against going on the show too. So anything that I'm against, always do the opposite. It'll always work out really, really well. Really, really well. That's what I've learned about myself. And we ended up getting into this program. So we moved to New York and ended up raising around $2 million for our startup within a few months. And that was kind of a real eye-opener, because I think, as you guys probably can agree to, when you have kind of this creative business, you're really not sure how to bridge it into a way that is profitable for yourself. Like, you can make the company money and have it be self-funded, but to really like kind of get that kick up and figure out how you get funding for something like that and how you sell it to these investors was something that I had never thought about before. And I'm really fortunate that they let us into the program.
Yeah, product is hard, especially you have to convince them of the product, the risk, the manufacturing, all that stuff. I think the workshops, you know immediately that you're going to make money, whereas with even the clothing
Yeah,
line, you kind of have to wait it out a little bit. You know,
absolutely.
it's a reinvestment over and over. Whereas,
Absolutely.
service, you can make money immediately and just really go do
Right,
well
because
with
people
it.
are paying up front. And I feel like
Right.
when you make that switch to a different kind of payment method, or
Uh-huh.
you do net 60s with all these huge retailers where they don't pay you till 60 days later. So you really
Yeah.
have to come up with this capital first. It was like when we started working with Macy's, it was like we were both thrilled and it was like, oh, this is amazing. And then they put in this $50,000 order. And then we got the order and we were celebrating. And then, after one shot of tequila, we kind of both sat back and we're like, wait, how do we make this? Right, they're going to give us this money, but they're not going to give us this money until we
Ship
give
it.
them the stuff. Like, how do we do this? Because it's not really something, I didn't go to business school. Mike did. But it's really something that you don't really think about at first. Because I think we're in such an age where you just see numbers on a paper and you're like,
Yeah.
whoa, like that's more zeros than I've seen. And then you just get excited from that. And you don't really think about not just the money to come up with it, but also how much time it's going to take you to make that much of that. I think that was one of the first growing pains that we ever had.
So were you selling the maker's kits to Macy's or the clothing line?
We were selling the maker's kits. Yeah. Once the classes took off and we came up with this concept of packaging classes and then having them come with videos, we kind of stopped doing the clothes and we're really focused on trying to run with that and seeing if we could grow something out of that. I think we were both excited by the idea of taking this in-person experience and then seeing if we could somehow make it a digital experience, but also have the same feel to it.
I used to live by this florist. It was like a really high-tech florist in the San Fernando Valley and in LA.
I only go to high-tech florists.
Well, no, it was cool because you could take classes and it had digital screens in front of you and you would pay for the flowers and then you would take the class that would tell you how to do arrangements.
Okay. So
you could buy, but then it was like this in-person. It obviously went out of business because I think that's a lot of people and a lot of supply without having like set courses, but it's like that was the in-person version. So how did you guys navigate that then? You get the order from Macy's, you're not getting paid, like this is ahead of time. You have to buy in the product, you have to package, you ship, and then you don't get paid till 60 days after. What did you guys do?
Well, there's always the option of, having it factored where you get a funder who will take 10% of the total price. I'm Jewish, so that was not going to work for me.
So
I was like, absolutely not. I'm like, you said 1? They're like 10. I'm like, oh, we don't do zeros. Like, oh, sorry, that's not going to work for me. So luckily for us, initially, we were still doing the workshops all around, at this point, all around California. We were doing events in LA and we started doing events with West Elm in their stores and with Macy's and even before they carried our kits. So we were very fortunate that the workshops that we were doing could at least mainly fund our first POs. But besides that, I mean, Mike drove for Uber. I worked in a cafe part-time. I was working on TV productions in LA just as a production assistant. I mean, I think the hustle that you have to do to get success is so not glamorous. And I think, and that's what I mean by people only see numbers. I mean, I remember even when we got our startup invested in, our bank account was at $2 million and we had all this press around it and Forbes wrote about us and all. And I remember the biggest misconception was that I was rich. Because I was like, I still haven't gotten I haven't gotten a paycheck like in 4 years. Like, and I was like, I don't know who's rich here. Like, I'm still not getting paid. And I think that, those are things you don't know until it happens. And because I would have thought the same thing. you see articles about startups raising all this money and you're like, oh, so they're rich. And it's like, no, that money's all spent already.
It's
Like,
true.
absolutely.
Pre-spent. So would you, if you were telling like Baby John back in the day, would you guys have taken that Macy's PO, or would you have maybe not gone into a big box store just, or like a, one of those stores yet?
I think in the end, one of our biggest dilemmas was that idea of doing B2C or going through just big box retailers versus just selling it on our site. I think when it came down to it, it was just the mass appeal, like the reach.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Macy's has a reach that we would never have, especially in the early days. There's just no way. And so we always were in the mindset of always saying yes, just always saying yes, because we really believe that you never know. I mean, the idea that we had of making these DIY kits that came with videos, we didn't necessarily think like this is going to explode onto the scene. It was just like, well, this is kind of a clever idea. We haven't seen this before. Let's see what happens. So when we would get calls from Macy's or Urban Outfitters being like, we want to order, it was like, yes. And then we would hang up the phone. Then we would take the shot of tequila, and then we'd go, that's a lot of money that we got to come up with.
Let's unpack
Mike's like turning on the Uber app and being like, bye.
Bye. I got to go before the phone call's over.
I want to dig a little bit deep into this because when you guys were doing this, you weren't in the online sphere yet. There wasn't really Amazon out there. The reach is different because it's traditional. Yeah. It's big box stores.
Absolutely.
So where you say you need to be, saying yes to everything, I like to teach, be relentless with your no's. Like as a solopreneur and as a small business, you have to envision what you want to envision for yourself. I think when you're in startup, you get so distracted by all those really big deals and it's hard to know what you really want. And that's changed in the landscape of being a solo entrepreneur. Now we get to choose what we want. Whereas you guys kind of, it came to you and then you were able to say yes or no, but it was really in the traditional model, wouldn't you say?
I think, especially because it was like such a physical product and it was such a new concept that we knew that we had to leverage these people's audiences.
Yeah.
We knew that they were going to have to see it in a store, see an example of it, and be able to actually hold it. Because there was no way that you were going to know what was in this box unless you actually saw it. So I think really early on, we really knew that we had to get it out with trusted names. Like it wasn't going to be enough if we were to just put our stamp on it because no one knew who our brand was at the time. So we knew that we really had to focus because, there's people that do retail plays and have thousands of small boutiques around and that's awesome. And if your product is super, especially hipster focused, you usually can kill it like that. But I think then, you're also talking to 3,000 people and those 3,000 people are ordering and they all have their own problems. So I think really early on, we knew that our goal was that we were going to work with only major retailers. Like that was our play. I think when we started off, we knew that if we were going to do this and work this hard for something, it couldn't be small. Like we weren't willing to have it be small. It was like, no, when we go do this, we only are going to ask these people. I remember Williams Sonoma was the first one that we called. And, we only had prototypes at that time, but it was like this, but it doesn't matter. This is our goal. Like, so show her the prototypes. If she hates them, she'll tell us why she hates them. And they ended up knocking them off instead.
Another podcast.
Another one.
So then transitioning. So you guys obviously love the product sphere because you transitioned and you guys opened up Pins and Paper. So I guess now, because the business is about a year old, tell us about your model now, because we met you in a very traditional place. So were we in Project? You're at Project in Vegas, which is a trade show where you're selling wholesale to retailers and the big box stores walk through. Is there anything you're doing differently this time around?
I think with our card company this time, I think the main focus is on having it be as passive as possible, which I think doing trade shows is obviously not that passive of a thing, but our line is so new that we felt like we should, because to us, we know that there's two options. There's either you have the Amazon model where super passive. To us, we knew cards didn't sell on Amazon. That just isn't where people buy those. It's in places like Target and Walgreens. And so I think our focus is definitely on having it be more passive, but in a more, I guess, conventional way. With these huge retailers again. I also think it's because of the space that we're really comfortable with. And we've worked with all of these people before. So we kind of had the contacts already to be able to do that.
You can call up Urban Outfitters and it fits right in.
Yeah, exactly. And I think we also design these cards around things that we knew would fit with these people. Because I think we knew that was the goal yet again. And I agree with you. I think it's very important to set what your goal is and to not go. With Maker's Kit, we definitely said yes to way too many things. And we just didn't have enough time to focus on all of them. So a lot of them would just fall by the wayside. And we're definitely trying to not have that happen again and to kind of really just keep it honed down. And I also think getting to a place where we were both so hungry 5 years ago when we were doing Maker's Kit that all in our head was like, blow it up, make it as big as possible, have this like crazy big company. Because, you know, we worked with Birchbox and Tom's and National Geographic and just blow it. I think this time around, I think we really just want to be able to fund, really our own existences. I think that's kind of because last time we had 30 employees, and I think this time around, we're really just trying to trim all the fat and be like, I would like to see it become passive enough and do well enough that we could travel and do all of those things. Because there really is a cost to having something so big that takes all your time.
Yeah, and even in logistics too, those kits are big versus enamel pins and cards are smaller, so you could actually and then also with those kits, you have to source everything that's in there as well. So it's less pieces for sure.
Oh, for sure. Like I said, I think it frees up time. And I think that's like the most important thing, because we talk to entrepreneurs all the time who just want so badly to have something big. Like, oh, I want to have this huge company. I want to be a CEO. And I a lot of times feel, because as I said, I think it's one of those things you don't know until you do it, like the toll that takes on you. And if that's something that you're set up for, that's awesome. As a creative, it's just not what I'm set up for. Mm-hmm. Like it really always felt like kind of the death of the creative side when we were talking to investors about numbers and hitting targets and making sure. And I felt like there we got to a moment where it was like, we almost weren't liking it enough anymore because we were so overworked and so overstressed, and we had too many employees that we were dealing with. And it really just became this like almost huge hassle for us.
So how would you say then that the cards are more passive than Maker's Kit? I guess Maker's Kit, was it a subscription service?
We had tried that. We worked with a lot of subscription services. Okay. So we worked with Birchbox for a while, and we're in a few of their boxes. And that, when we launched Maker's Kit in 2013, that was like the moment for subscription. Mm-hmm. Everyone always assumed we were a subscription because they were just like, this is the year of subscriptions. You must be a subscription. Like you must be one. But for us, we just found that it just didn't translate into that way to our actual customers. Mm-hmm. Like it just wasn't something that they were interested in. And then also we had so much ground going with all these big box retailers already that it would just have been a completely different business than what we had already set up for ourselves.
Mm-hmm. All right. So what's your favorite? Because I was trying to remember some of the cards that I like. There was one with a cactus for you guys, and there was a rocket ship, I think. But what are some of your favorite cards that you guys are selling right now?
Yeah, so we do mainly all puns, which I don't know where that started, to be honest. I think we just wanted to have something that was kind of like ridiculous and fun to work with. As I said, I think it was also because of the strict contrast to where we left our last startup with how serious everything got. I think we were like, we just want to do something fun and something cute that people can like and laugh at. So we started making all these cards. I think my favorite is the one with there's two rabbits, I guess, having sex on the card. And it's my favorite. It's my favorite one. You gotta look it up. It's really cute. Personally, yeah, I think that's my favorite one. A lot of them we hand draw. So we have like this robot that's holding this heart balloon that I drew. I think that's my favorite one just because I drew it. But I think we were super excited about this company because there's so many different levels to it that we get to do. I mean, we both like design a lot. Mike is just a brilliant in terms of packaging, and I've been drawing since I was a little kid. So I think we get to draw the cards, we get to design the pins. We're getting to choose these retail partners to work with now, and we have a few projects that we're working on where we're co-branding things for people now. So I think just getting to be able to keep it as creative as possible and having it that we're just constantly making things and not just trying to sell things has been like a really big blessing in both of our lives.
So a couple of cards, like I'm on your site. So just to kind of share with the audience. So there's one with a French fry pin and it says, I only have fries for you. Well,
Yes.
It's a little pin in the way, or give me a pizza that, and it's a little pizza pin, or thanks a latte with a latte pin. So some really cute stuff where, I guess talking about like papyrus, like how much I've spent on wedding cards there with no takeaway at all from that card.
Yeah.
Like,
for sure.
like what do you do with those cards where you're spending, I don't know, $8 to $10 on a wedding card that just goes in the trash?
It's a lot. And I think that was actually something for our company that we had to figure out was price point wise, because when you buy enamel pins in places, they cost anywhere from $10 to $13. But we knew there was no way that we could sell a card for that much. Just because once you put it on a card, it completely changes how people view it and what they think it's for. And so we really knew that we had to keep it low. But another thing is also like working with huge retailers, you also have to know that you also have to keep your price high. Because when you're selling to smaller stores, you're selling at 50%, wholesale. And when you're selling to massive stores, I mean, you're selling at, 30%. And you really have to set yourself up with that. If I could give anyone advice, if they were looking to do big box retailers, it's just sell things for a lot. Like, be a luxury brand. Like, I feel like being a luxury brand that only has to sell 10,000 units a year to hit their target versus having kind of, like ours, where it's like, if you want to make it, you need to sell millions. And I feel like that's a lot of things that I think people don't think is you really get to set your brand's value. And I think branding is kind of the biggest thing to any product company or just personality in general, is if you decide that that's what your brand is and that's what your look and feel is, and you stick to that, you can really sell that idea.
Yeah,
but for us, we've always wanted it to be as accessible as possible. So we have the exact opposite goal. But
I think one of the things that people do to expand when they're in expansion is they create the luxury brand, the middle brand, and the low cost brand. So if you wanted to, you could just create another brand. So you start off as the Lux brand. So let's say you're Lexus. Then, the middle one would be Toyota, and then the little, I don't know what's less than Toyota, like Kia or something. I don't know. Sure. But you get what I'm saying. I obviously know nothing about cars, but you get the, if they were owned by the same company, like, is it Lexus and Toyota owned by the same people?
Yeah. I think Uber is a really good example of that, because when Uber started in San Francisco 8 years ago, it was black car. That was it. You couldn't, and it was expensive. And that was the point. I mean, we used to take them everywhere just because 6 of us would get out of a blacked out Escalade. And the guy would open the door and it would look like we were some branding. Talk about branding. Uber used to be a really good branding move. And then, and it went that way for a while. And then they started to do UberX, and which I know that don't remember what his name is, but the guy that owns Uber hates it. Just thinks it's trash that they would sell rides for that cheap, because he was only in the mode of luxury. Like, that's what the service was. And then obviously, the board was like, we need to be accessible to everyone. And so they did UberX, and now they have Uber Pool. So I feel like that's a really good example of a brand that started off on top and then branched out. And it's also an example of how the guy was wrong, because ever since they started doing UberX, Uber's worth like $1 billion now. And obviously that was the right move to go, and everyone uses it. My dad, my 75-year-old old Jewish dad uses it now to go anywhere. I feel bad for anyone that has to drive him. I apologize already. Bit problematic, that man.
That's how we get my grandma. Like, she's uncomfortable. She lives in Orange County and we need to get her to LA. We're like, we're just going to send you an Uber. So it's helpful in that way. But they also used to have, speaking of like products, Uber used to have Uber Family. So where you could get an Uber with car seats. And so it would take kids around. And then they probably also saw that people weren't using that. Like, either people were, especially in New York, either people, I remember, like, you would take your car seat on the stroller and then you would take that car seat and put it in a cab or in an Uber. So they probably also saw that that product wasn't doing as well, or it didn't, there wasn't a need. So they dropped that out and then added on new things.
I remember working with one of our old mentors is Gary Vaynerchuk. He runs VaynerMedia, or a huge media group in New
Gary
York.
V?
Gary V. Love Gary V.
He's your mentor?
It's Mina's digital mentor.
I love him. He's kind of swears a lot, but for my taste, but but I love him. Yeah, he's gruff. Yeah, that's for sure.
He is a catch. That's for sure. He's a catch that you just don't know how to move fast enough to catch. You're like, I don't know how we got to this topic, but okay. But he always told us that the only thing that you can sell people that they will buy no matter what is time. Mm-hmm. If you can, like, for us, for our DIY kits, it was the fact that you didn't have to go buy these supplies yourself. Like, we were going to cut out the middleman. We were just going to get everything that you needed, so you just didn't have to waste time. And it's the same thing that he told us with why he invested in Uber so early, which is because it just saves you time. You have a car waiting outside versus you need to already be ready, go outside, wait to see if you can get a cat. And if you can really find some creative way to save people 1 minute, I mean, you are set up in a really good place to be able to kind of knock it out of the park at that point.
I love
and that was really one of the main, that, and also everything is a brand was one thing he really made sure that we understood, was that you are a brand, and the biggest way to grow your brand nowadays is through content. Whether if it's through podcast or Instagram or videos on YouTube or whatever. I mean, with his wine business, he grew it strictly through content. It makes millions a year. So,
but he invested in Snapchat too, right?
Yeah.
Which Insta stories basically took over. And then Kylie Kardashian said something about, I don't even open Snapchat anymore. And they
stopped.
Yeah, basically.
I remember knowing Snapchat was done when Mark Zuckerberg offered them $1 billion in cash and they said no. And then the next day he offered them $2 billion and they said no. And I was like, that is going to be the biggest regret of your life ever. Like, because not only did you say no, but this dude is going to take you down now.
Yeah.
Like,
and he did it through Instagram.
And then he's gonna take you down. You should have took those billions. Like, why not?
That's a B. That's a B.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's also important to know your goal, right? Especially if you have a co-founder, because we've seen a lot of companies run into problems when the two founders just don't agree with what their main goal is. Because if I had owned Snapchat, I would have been like, oh, did we say? Oh, well, I sold mine. Like, oh, was I not supposed to? Like, why would we not? That's $1 billion each. Like, why? Like, no, we got to be like a big, crazy company. Like, right. Or we could be billionaires, which is pretty cool. Like, I feel like that would be all right.
And start something else. Come up with
something else. Yeah. Like, come up with a new, So I feel like those guys probably think about that day a lot now.
Gary Vaynerchuk always says that it's all about the hustle, though. He wants people to hustle. I am against that mentality. I think that you don't have to hustle. You just have to be really smart about it. It's not like the number of hours don't equate how successful you'll be. So, but he's always like, you should be eating ramen noodles 365 days in the year and blah, blah, blah. And that doesn't work for we were talking about CEOs. That does not work for a CEO mom. Another thing where, like, when you, when you're a CEO and you were saying it's the worst ever, you're dealing with all these like employees and being tired and is working to death. Try having kids, John.
Yeah.
This is why we're good CEOs.
Yeah. Yeah, I actually was watching
the same scenario.
A documentary yesterday on why women get paid less. And Stanford did a study that showed that after women have kids, they are actually, and I don't remember what they used to decide this, but they said they were actually better employees, that they
Oh,
were way more committed, that they were harder working, that they made more sacrifices after they had kids. Like,
Huh.
anyway, sorry, just
thank you.
I
Thank you for that.
agree with you. Moms,
Yeah,
yes, moms
agreed.
rule.
Agreed.
I mean, yeah, my mom, I was raised by a single mom. She worked 2 jobs. She was in the Air Force for 20 years as a nurse.
Wow.
And then I had a side job on the side of that and raised 3 kids. And
The hustle is
I
real.
wake up in the morning, I'm not sure if I'm even going to go to work. So I don't know how she really did that.
The more kids you have, or your time gets broken up in smaller sections.
Right.
We were talking about this. Like, I remember when I used to watch, I don't know, Biggest Loser used to be on for like 3 hours sometimes back in my 20s. And I remember just like vegging on my couch after work and doing whatever. And now it's like the last time I sat on my couch was never. So I don't remember when. And so you just do, like, you start to have to prioritize in different ways. But so you were talking about content and growing content. So in terms of tips for people on Instagram or social media or video, what would you say has been successful for you guys?
I think before you set out on that, you have to kind of, and going back to the Gary V thing, that everything's a brand. No matter what you're going to sell, even if it's just like selling yourself, or if it's selling a product, or if it's selling an idea, you have to know what your brand is. Because if you make any content that is not relevant to what your brand is, you immediately confuse your audience, and it's impossible to build an audience on that, because people want to know what they're watching. They don't want to be like, oh, what is this going to be? And then every time it's different, and people can tell when you're not being authentic. So I think really knowing what it is that you're trying to put across, and never really swaying away from that. Because I think especially with growing an audience, it's so difficult to do, that if you don't seem like you are aware of your concept or where you're trying to go with it, I feel like your audience knows that. And I feel like everyone is pressed for time, that I feel like people don't have time to watch someone try to figure it out. It's like, you either figure it out and then show me, or like, don't show me. I have, because I have billions of other pieces of content that I'm bombarded with every single day. So I think really knowing who you're trying to target, and then not going away from that at all, and really just shoving it down their throats, I think is one thing. And then also, like you said about Gary with the hustling all day, all night, I think that's something that we did with our last startup. I mean, we were working 17 hours a day, mainly in our office, and then our phones would go off all day, all night with either retailers or our investors or someone that wanted to, and we just were doing it and doing it and doing it and doing it. And not until I was in Asia did I ever have a moment where I stood back and was like, whoa, that was like a lot. Like, that was like, like, I remember one day we were throwing a cocktail party in the Vogue office. And we were, making something with them. And it was like this cocktail social, because Vogue was doing a piece about us, and like, so like doing it. And I remember leaving and just feeling like I didn't even know that it happened, because we were already on to the next. It was like, okay, well, now we got to go back to the office and approve these products. And this time around, I think that the way to make it more passive, as it goes back to what we were talking about earlier, was we just decided that our goal was not to work that hard. Like, that if we weren't figuring out ideas that allowed us to make income, but also still get to enjoy our lives, then it wasn't worth it. No matter what the check said, or no matter how many orders were coming in, if it was like something where we were going to be in a place where we didn't have time to appreciate what was happening to us, then it didn't matter at the end of the time. Because I think it's true that money comes and goes. And if you're not focusing on your own life as well as your company's, then I feel like both of them are going to go downhill. Because the moment that you become unhappy, then your environment becomes toxic. And so all the people that work with you, all the work that you're putting out, like, I think it becomes apparent in it when you're really ran down thin like that. And I think it's also just the difference between, Gary being Gary and being such a figure to millennials, and then me being a millennial. Is I'm like, we are in this day and age where we don't want jobs like that anymore. Like, we don't want to work somewhere for 50 years. we don't, you know what I mean? Like, we just don't
Yeah.
want to we don't want to do things that aren't fun. We don't understand why you would do them if you didn't enjoy them. And especially growing up in, terms of, Uber being a thing where you can just work for yourself and this kind of like subcontracting every small job. It's just a completely different culture now, where I feel like that idea of the harder you work, the more it pays off. It's just not true. I've seen people work hard. My mom worked 3 jobs all of her life, and she just barely retired. I just don't think the two. I think it's like an old American myth that people have been sold, where like, oh, if you just work really, really, and you won't get anywhere without working hard. But there's no promise that because you work hard that you're going to make it. And so I really feel like believing in what you do, thinking that it's worth the sacrifice, and then also making sure that you have time to like your life and to love your life, I think is very, very important, especially, I guess, to anyone under the age of 40.
Yeah, brilliant. You're beyond your millennial years, Jawn.
Thank you.
We say it as if we're like right on that cusp. You never know.
Yeah, I'm a grandma now.
Well, my mom, my mom's 67, and my mom has always said it. My mom's like, oh, you guys just won't do anything unless it's fun. You just ask why you have to do it. Like, why? Like, well, that doesn't sound fun. Why do we have to do that? And I feel like it is true. We are the generation of why.
Well, so I think I was talking to my husband about this because I just met 2 other moms/wives that their husbands are either being able not to work, or one husband's kind of going to stop working and help with the kids, versus these wives are starting to take over and become like the like earners, the major earners in the family. And I think what's happening too is that women are starting to be able to take on that role instead of feeling like it's one or the other, mom or mom that's not able to take care of their kids all the time because they're working all, that women are being able to keep their careers going. And then men are also able to take a step back, because oftentimes, like, we don't talk about guys, but they used to have to sacrifice. So they used to have to go to that job wearing the tie. And maybe they didn't really want to do that, but that was what was expected of them as well. So I think we're given more choices now. And I agree, like working hard. Yes. When you're starting a business, it takes a lot more hours than once the business starts to chug along on its own. And that's when you really have to have the time to dedicate towards it. But do you have to work hard forever? No, like you just have to work smart and focus when you need to focus. And then, like you said, then go to China for a year or Asia for a year.
Sure. Well, I think one of the mistakes not mistakes, but just one thing that we had to learn is, at our last startup, we would hire all these people to run every little thing because we thought it was going to save us time. And in the end, it just mainly did the exact opposite. Because now we had another person who had their own problems, who didn't understand certain things, who were good at something, and then who needed our time as well. And at the end of the day, I think with most things, it was like, oh, if we could have just done that ourselves. Like, yeah, we didn't want to, but I really feel like it took more to like have someone else do it and work with them than it did to just keep it a small, lean machine that we ran by ourselves. And yeah, I think you get excited by this idea of hiring people because I think it legitimizes what you're doing. You're like, oh, we have employees. Like, how legitimate is this? And like, we're actual bosses. And I feel like a lot of times that kind of takes its own toll on your business and like keeping up on things and knowing what everyone's doing and who's not doing it. And yeah, I think keeping a small, well-oiled machine is a lot better than having something that's very massive.
I think Jacqueline said this in a previous episode that's not aired yet. I don't know when it's going to air.
It might have aired by the time we aired this episode.
We have no idea. But she said it's hard to manage people. It's its own set of skills that you have to learn. So like people think that, you hire somebody and then voila, that's it. But it's not. You have to learn how to manage someone too. And then everybody has a different dynamic with different people. And some people don't like it. I don't like managing people at all, whereas Jacqueline, I think that she naturally, her strength is communicating well with people. Whereas mine is, I make all appointments online. I don't, they don't like to communicate with people, so I think that's for sure 100%. Like if you have to manage somebody, it is its own job that you have to kind of think about if that's what
just a note to anyone who works for someone else. The only thing that I wish that I could tell all of our old employees is please just like download Chrome, and any question that you have for me, please type it into the address search bar and at least let me know that you looked it up first. There are just so many times when it was like, oh, well, how do you do this on Photoshop? Like, YouTube is like a video thing, and it will literally show you a video of like the whole thing. Like, and I was always really surprised by how willing people, and not that you shouldn't ask questions. Like, obviously you should definitely ask questions, but I think also we're kind of in the day and age where you really have this resource that will tell you anything that you need to know. And you really kind of need to take that extra step into doing it. Because I also think that we live in the day and age of everyone just saying that they can do something because they should be able to, because you have the world's greatest resource at your fingertips at all times in the day.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's funny because we were airing an episode about hiring virtually and like the team, because I used to wear it as a badge of honor. I've got 5 people that work for me. They're on payroll. I pay their insurance. I have this huge office. And then eventually it's like the burden. I would always pay them before I paid myself, the management. So you start to get away from the creativity and you start having to just like take meetings with everyone and make sure that everyone's doing their job. And if some, the onboarding, the trainings, the accountability, the check-ins. So I'm in a similar place where I transitioned my business, and now it's like, I'll hire people virtually, but I like the simplicity of this as well. Like, and It's also not to say you can't grow the business, because I have.
Yeah. And hiring, I think, is like the hardest. So I am horrible at it.
Same here. I'm not allowed to hire people.
Like, me either. Because I'm like, I like you.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, I like
me.
you.
Like, you're the worst. You're the worst.
And I only say it after, hiring however many people. And I was just like, God, I'm really not good at this. And they're like, you need to stop hiring people based on their personalities. And I'm like, I know, but like, besides that, everyone just hands me a piece of paper. I'm asking them about questions that I have no idea the actual answers to anyways. Like, we had to hire developers to code our whole site. And it's like, talking with them, it's like I Googled some questions. And then,
you and Jacqueline are twins.
They'd start asking about it. And then I'd be like, I have no idea what you said, but I guess that means you probably answered well, because I don't know what you were talking about. So,
So I think shortcutting this, like the fact that you have a business partner and I have a business partner in the product boss, I think, there's the ability to cover more ground too, right? So you guys are able to do more than just you. Do you have anyone hired on right now that you guys are working with?
No. And I think right now we're trying to keep that as long as we can. I mean, we've also, decided things like we don't want to make things in-house. We work with a, not really factory, but a group in LA. It's all these handicap workers, either mentally handicapped or physically handicapped. We met this group of people a few years ago when we were doing Maker's Kit, but we could never get the pricing right to work together. They're a fabulous organization. And we just decided that one of our main goals and one of our main ways to keep it passive was the least that we had to touch anything, the better off that we personally would be. Because we had made that a goal in our last startup, and we never really seemed to be able to stick to that. And then we ran into problems with, we needed a bigger warehouse because we had to store more products or store more raw materials, and it was just like, we just decided that whatever we did next just couldn't have that many moving parts, and that we just didn't want to have to touch it as much.
So what about your role with Mike? So do you guys have specific roles? Who gets the final decision in certain things? Do you have anything like that where there's specific roles and specific decision-making areas that you each have of your own?
I think we both trust each other with very specific areas. Like, for instance, product design, I have, complete faith in Mike, not only to just like design a product, but to know what's hot, what trends are out, what product is going to work. I mean, he's just had a great track record of that. So anything that has to do with that, even if I don't agree with it, I will agree just to do it and have no problem with it if he fully believes in it. I think on my side, it has mainly to do with kind of branding and with the companies that we work with. Because I think Mike has always had a way bigger problem with saying yes to everything. Mike, and he's raised strictly Korean. His parents are all about small businesses and growing businesses. And so just his kind, and, you know, he's also older than I am. So we're not in the same generation. And he fully believes in that work hard, and the harder you work, faster you'll grow, the more successful you'll be. And I just have the complete different background. I'm like, how do we get a house on the beach in Mexico? Like, how do we do that part? Like, because I don't see us talking about that. And I'm a little concerned as to how working with all of these people is going to give us enough time to do that. So I think our balance works really well as a kind of a check and balance system. Mm-hmm. I think Mike just says yes to everything, and then we have to re-go over everything. And if I argue hard enough, we won't do it. Mm-hmm. And it's also different styles of working that we have. Mike's a very passive person. I can get really, really aggressive with things, get way too passionate about. That's why I was going to go into politics. I was like, I can argue and debate anything, even if I don't agree with it. And I think we found a really good balance in the fact that we've worked together so long, so we understand how we work. Mm-hmm. And I think that's something that a lot of people, you know, it takes so many years to be able to figure that out.
Yeah, for sure.
To be able to work past your issues and to just know what someone's going to do even before they do it. So when I see an email from big box retailer number 10 who's trying to have us design, display, and I'm like, Mike, if you respond to these people, like, we're done. Like, we're done. We're not building displays for 150, you know what I mean? 150 stores. And I know you'll say yes to it. So I already responded. We're not doing that. I think really finding a partner and then also spending the time to really understand how each other work, not just on a personal level, but in a professional manner as well.
Yeah. Agreed.
So we like to wrap up our interviews with some fun questions.
Yeah.
Maybe not as fun as your cards, but they're fun nonetheless.
I mean, okay, fun. This is like, you know, old people fun.
I get nervous on quick fire things because I tend to be really problematic and everyone gets mad. But let's.
No, I hope these are great answers. Okay. So it starts with, what is your coffee order?
My coffee order, it depends on which cup. I definitely am one of those drinks way too much caffeine a day. Mm-hmm. So at first, there's this thing that's huge in LA right now, which
Bulletproof?
No, it's called oat milk.
Oh, oat milk lattes.
That's how I know I'm back in LA, is when I'll be like, oh, can I get soy? And they're like, oh, we don't have soy, we have oat. I'm like, yeah, I'm definitely back in LA now.
Is that gluten-free though?
I don't. How do you make milk from oats?
It's delicious.
It tastes really good. Yeah. So I think probably an oat milk cappuccino to start, and then I switched to just espresso after that. I lived in Italy for a few months, and there I realized that people thought it was really weird that we put milk in our coffee.
Yeah.
The Americana is water and espresso. Yeah. So, you know, it's like, you know, weak compared to them, you know.
It's a lot.
So oat milk lattes, I was in Pittsburgh, not a single person had oat milk, not even the Whole Foods had oat milk. I was like, you guys are obviously not in LA or New York, where they're my most favorite.
Yeah, it's currently one of the things that my dad is, because my dad's like a super conservative, which is kind of weird because he's Jewish, and most Jewish people are not super conservative. He's a very conservative person, and I became vegetarian last year, and between that, if he found out that I drank oat milk, I swear he would come kidnap me and be like, I knew LA was going to ruin you. You're going to become one of those people. He always says one of those people. I'm like, I don't know what to say, Dad.
You are my soul brother. I am an oat milk drinking, vegan sometimes person from LA living in New Jersey. Okay.
Yeah. I just found out what orzo pasta was last year.
That has gluten in it. You wouldn't be eating it if you lived in LA.
I was like, what is this, rice or pasta?
No pasta, salads, bowls.
Yeah.
Okay, so what's the favorite thing on your desk?
Favorite thing on my desk? I have this old photo. So my mom is Puerto Rican, and her dad, we share the same name, and we look like identical twins.
But you don't look Puerto Rican.
I know. But it's like same face, except he's really dark and has black hair. But it's like we look there's this wedding photo of my grandma and my grandpa. They got married when they were 16. And it used to be on the wall in my mom's house. And she put it up when I was like 15 or something. I was going to the bathroom. As I was walking down the hallway, I saw the photo. And for a moment, I stopped and was trying to figure out who and when I took those like county fair photos, like old time. And I was like, who is that in the photo with me? And like, what? The same age. It couldn't have been that long ago. I was like, I don't understand. And I asked my mom, and she was like, no, that's your grandma and your grandpa. And it just scared the living daylights out of me. And then we went back to Puerto Rico a year later. And for the first time in my life, I just remember every one of my aunts and my cousins and just coming up to me and being like, oh my God, you look just like my brother. Like you look, and it just, that freaked me out because I always had this huge identity crisis when we would go back to Puerto Rico where I would just be like, something's not right here, Mom. Like, are you sure? Like, I don't want them to find out that you're lying. And then all of a sudden we are crashing this family reunion. I really had a big kind of issue with that when I was a kid because it was such an odd concept to me. So I think that's my favorite thing that I have on my desk. It's probably that photo of my grandpa.
That's
So
awesome.
cute.
Yeah.
Okay, so finish the sentence. When I pick up my phone, I
never respond. I think that is definitely my response to
John,
that.
another quick question. Are you at inbox 0 on your email?
No.
Soul
I'm
brother.
I'm gonna read your email, then click leave unread, and I like leave it in my inbox as a reminder. I just can't. But my thing about phones is there is this myth out there that if you text my phone, that I'm required to respond to you.
Mm-hmm.
And I just don't agree. Like when I look at my phone and it's like someone be like, hey, what's up? I'm like, I just don't. I just don't need to have that conversation.
None of your business.
Yeah, none of your if you have something to ask or you want to do something, like, cool, let me know. But I can't.
No time to chit chat.
Well, I just don't agree with that. Like, I don't agree. Because, people get upset. Oh, it gets so many, like, thanks for calling me back. I didn't. No, yeah. And I'm like, should you really call that out? Because I feel like now you just acknowledge that I didn't call, like, I don't want to call you. I feel like you should just roll with it. Yeah,
it's the access thing. People have access to people constantly.
All the time. Well, and it really is a myth. And that's what I think people don't understand is like, you don't have to respond all the time.
Yeah.
Like most of the time, it's literally just your friend being like, hey, what's up? Like, nothing. What are you up to? Nothing. Like, okay, cool. You want to hang out today? No, I'm busy. Like, okay, great. This was an awesome conversation. Awesome. Of course, I also get really upset when people ghost me. And I usually have to check myself and be like, I mean, John, you don't really respond most of the time. And I'm like, I guess that's true. Yeah,
so does Mike respond to all emails and all text messages?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Mike gets the most upset at me when he'll be like, oh, did you see whatever document I sent you today? And I'm like, yeah, I saw it. And he's like, okay. And then he'll start talking about something. I'll be like, wait, what are you talking about? They're like, it's in the things that I emailed you. And I'm like, oh, no, yeah, like I saw it. Like I saw that it was there. I didn't read it yet.
Yeah.
And he's like, do you read my emails? And I'm like, when it's like relevant, like, when I know I need to know what's in it.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I'm definitely not an email person.
Mm-hmm.
Usually you have to call me and then we can get it. It's so fast. It's so much faster. It doesn't have to go back and forth.
That's so non-millennial of you.
I know.
You have to connect with people on a phone.
I won't even listen to voicemails. Luckily now, they have the transcribing that's, on the iPhone. I love that so much. I'm like, delete.
I just let mine fill up and I don't even.
Mine too. My mom, bless her heart, leaves me messages all the time. And I'm just like, Mom, I don't listen to them. Like, I don't know why I would need to.
Just text me, which I won't respond to.
Just text me, yeah, I'll call you back, or like it doesn't matter. I just won't respond.
So how about this? You wish you knew how to.
I was gonna say fly, but I want to think of something real here.
Yeah.
This is a real thing, and I think this is gonna touch back into that. I wish I knew how to not be so anxious in public. I really feel I'm the guy that will act like he's on his phone a lot of times when I'm by myself in public. Like I'll just like, and I literally talk. It's a huge issue that I have with myself. And I'm like, why do you do that? Like, I don't understand.
I don't
need to
like
get
talking. It's
Voxer.
because you don't want to talk to people. I
Yeah.
literally will put on a hat and sunglasses so nobody will approach me. I have a very approachable face in my defense that people approach me all the time. So I'm
does.
like,
She
obviously,
does. You can't see it through the podcast. She does.
You and Jawn have very
it's the
approachable
dimples,
faces.
or something.
It's
I
the
don't know.
dimples.
People stop me
It's the
all the
dimples.
time, and I'm just like, seriously.
Yeah, I really don't like it. I'm with you on that. It's also like I don't respond to text either, so I'm not really like the most. I'm usually like, if we're not trying to make money together,
Yeah.
can't really offer too much.
I appreciate you then.
Money or art. If we're trying to make
So-
art, of course. If not, I don't know.
So would you say you're an introvert, extrovert? This is another
Yeah,
question I'm inserting.
I think that I'm definitely one of those introverted extroverts. I think, well, because I know, and I think this is why I don't really, why I get so anxious about going out in public is when I'm in a group, I perform.
Mhm.
And it exhausts me beyond all belief. Like, because I will not let there be silence. Like, I don't believe in it. Like, I've always been under the impression, like, if you feel bored, then we shouldn't be hanging out. And I take it as a personal responsibility to make sure that things are lively and people are having fun. And, I can't take an Uber ride. Like, I really refuse to take Uber most times because I will talk to the driver the entire time. And it exhausts me. Like we get in and I'm just like, so where are you from? And I'm like, and then I just don't stop. And I'm like, oh, do you have kids? Oh, how is it living away from your kids? That must be rough. Like, and I just won't stop. And so I think that's the reason why I act like I'm on my phone all the time.
Yeah.
So
I can see that.
an introverted extrovert.
I like that. Do you watch TV?
I watch I wouldn't say TV.
Netflix?
I watch Netflix. Yeah.
Okay, because this is the next question. Because sometimes people are like, oh, I don't watch TV. So what was the last show you binge watched?
It's a show called Nailed It. It's on
I've seen that.
Netflix. It's this cooking competition that's about failing. So they like take these massive cakes that are carved like dragons that have fire coming out of the mouth, and then they take these horrible bakers and they ask them to recreate it, and it is just one of the best things that at our old startup, one of the shows that we were pitching to networks was this like Pinterest or fail type of show where we get people to try to recreate the most popular things on Pinterest, knowing that they won't be able to.
Of course, because of the hashtag nailed it, right?
Yeah, because the hashtag nailed it. Yeah, and that's the catchphrase on the show. And the girl that hosts it is just the most entertaining woman that I've ever seen. It's not a good show.
Oh, it sounds awesome. I'm going to watch that tonight when I'm folding laundry.
When you're watching TV, I don't think anybody calls it TV anymore.
It's pretty great. Yeah, so that I think was the last show that I binge watched.
That's awesome.
Oh, that and the show Pose. I don't know if you guys saw that. It's amazing.
All right, we'll look those up. So what should the title on your business card actually say?
Do not text.
Don't actually use this number.
Find me in person. It'll just be blank. It'll have my name and be like, this is my name. Hopefully I see you around. That would be awesome. One of the things I loved about living in New York so much was you meet so many people every day that whenever I would meet people out in bars, we would never exchange numbers. I mean, I remember specific nights where I met this group of women. They invited me to this birthday party. I left my friends to go with them. We took a cab all the way uptown, went to this massive birthday party, and then I left. I was like, so nice to meet you guys. Like, had the best night of my life. And there was no like, oh, but shouldn't we? Because there's just always this, well, you'll meet more people tomorrow. I think I'm definitely one of those people that I prefer to talk to people I don't know, because I find it way more interesting. You can learn a lot more, not just about them, but about yourself and how you interact with people and what you care about. Because I also don't do small talk. I jump right into trauma right away. I'm like, tell me about your trauma. And if you're not going to, then I don't really think this conversation is going to go far.
So
yeah.
No, it's true. It's like, I feel like New York and Vegas, you don't need to exchange numbers in Vegas either.
Yeah. Well, everyone's lying in Vegas.
Yeah.
So, like,
but every culture is there. I love how you hear so many different languages, different cultures. It's crazy.
You have to explore it.
Absolutely.
So do you have an alter ego or stage persona?
I'm going to say yes, because simply for the conversation that we were saying about being an introverted extrovert, I think there is this character that comes out whenever I talk to people. But I also feel like they're very, very closely related, very closely related. And I also think my extroverted part is a little bit more problematic. I try really hard to make people as uncomfortable as possible. I think it's really important. I had this one philosophy professor at Berkeley who was just like, if you're not making people question what it is they do or who they are, then you're offering no one anything. And
I think that probably makes them feel closer to you, though. You know how people say that when you're uncomfortable and then you just feel more vulnerable and closer to that person, like how people like they might fall in love out of trauma. Like let's say they were in a natural disaster together or something, and then they fall in love because that conflict brought out emotions in them that they don't normally. So I'm sure they end up falling in love with you, John.
Hey, that's why I don't answer my text. I'm like, I don't know this number, just don't text it. Don't text it. You probably made them talk to you about their childhood trauma and now they feel bonded.
All coming together. So the last question then is, what would you tell young John or baby John now that you didn't know then?
That things keep moving. I think that I've always kind of jokingly said to myself that the whole point of life was to learn to let go and to know that the story keeps going. Because you get so caught up in each chapter of your life that you forget that you're literally, it's a chapter. Like it's not the book. Like the book is its own thing, and that'll figure itself out down the line. Because you get into in business, in your personal life, where you just feel like you don't know where things are going to go. And I feel like it really stops you from moving. But I think if you can just always remember that even if you stop walking, it's still going to move. Mm-hmm. And I think just knowing that everything keeps going, I think is the biggest part.
Seriously brilliant. I'm in love with you.
I've been thinking about it for a few years.
I will text you later.
I will write you back. I promise.
Maybe.
Well,
thank you so much. Like this is so fun. My face hurts from smiling and laughing.
Thanks for having me.
So tell our listeners how they can find you.
You can look up my new card company, Pins and Paper, anywhere. We're trying to be everywhere, but the name you can definitely find anywhere. And then my name is just Jawn McQuade. And if you type that into Google, JAWN, there's not very many of us alive. There's not.
And his login for Zoom was Johnny.
It's good.
I mean, that's what it is on everything. My Instagram is Johnny. My Twitter's John. It's all that.
So we'll put a link in the show notes for how to find your website, Pins and Paper, and your social links.
Killing it.
All right.
After spending all this time of being like, I don't talk to people. I'm like, find me.
DM me.
Why not? I do respond to DMs. That is honestly, I feel like if someone writes me on Instagram, they have more of a chance that I'm going to respond than if they text my phone.
That is literally what we just told our masterminds this morning.
Instagram tells you when you've read it now. Mm-hmm. I've made my iPhone stop doing that because I was like, well, now everyone's just going to know I don't respond. Mm-hmm. And then Instagram started doing if you read someone's messages, it tells them. And I'm like, oh, that's...
Yeah. We were just saying that, like, Instagram is a way to connect with people that you wouldn't necessarily be able to connect with. They might not write back to you via email, but if you DM them, they might respond.
Yeah. Well, especially like here in LA, because I curate a lot of art shows out here. And I've seen it with musicians and with artists. And I feel like just younger people, I think Instagram is literally our kind of main way of connecting now, especially when you're out. I feel like you don't ask people for their phone numbers. You ask them for an Instagram because it's not as personal, but also you get a snapshot of their life, which I feel like
less creepy, right? You're not like creeping on them on Facebook, having to friend them. It's like less of a process,
Yeah. But at the same time, I also think it's more creepy. So that'll figure itself out in a few years.
Well, we'll see you on Instagram. All right. Thank you so much for joining the Product Boss.
This episode is over, but it doesn't have to end. Head over to our Facebook group, search for the Product Boss Biz Community, or the link is also in the show notes. Come connect with other product bosses just like you. We'll see you in there.